What's up, agents, and welcome back to another Division video where again we're going to talk about the Catalyst mask, but this time it's not going to be the same as the previous video. We're going to compare it in a build because in my comments of that previous video Patrick Wolf dropped into them and said he's been having a lot of fun with it. So don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe, and let's get straight into it. Now, I haven't got the exact details of the build he is using. I don't think he's published that yet either, but he did give me some damage numbers and things like that. And he didn't mention if he was using modifiers or anything like that. But he did say that he was using a Backfire build. Now, we know Backfire builds are all the rage this season. Everybody's loving them. I did a video on quite a few of them. I didn't really fall in love with the playstyle with them. I tested it with Umbra, Hunter's Fury, Strikers, and it wasn't kind of my playstyle. Nothing against it. I understand why a lot of people like it. It just is what it is though. But I thought I'd put this build together. So this was the build that he was talking about. Now, I am hitting for less damage than what he mentioned to me. So I can only assume he's either running the modifiers or he's got more red cores in his build. In fairness, this chest piece is pretty tricky to get because you've got to get it with crit chance, crit damage and obliterate. So it probably would just be easier to run this as a red core attribute. And I'm guessing that may be what he's running. Or like I said, he's running the modifiers. But let's just go over a couple of things before we start. He wasn't running this mask, he was running the Catalyst. Obviously, that's what we're talking about. But we were talking about the comparison that I did in my previous video with the Coyotes and the Catalyst. So let's start off first of all with some very important information about the Catalyst that I think people missed that I actually did mention in my last video. It does have some advantages. I'm not completely against it. It has 25% bonus armor, and obviously in a build like this where I've got 1.7 mil armor, that's actually going to be pretty substantial. Is armor worth anything in this game? I don't think so. I know some people like to stack a bit up, but I think, you know, we lose it as quick as we gain it. So unless you're going super excessive with Bloodsucker and things like that, you know, all the seasonal modifiers, I don't think that is worth too much anyway, the value of that. We get 20% reload speed. Well, again, that's probably more beneficial to LMGs. Every other weapon in the game is already pretty good, but 20% reload speed is 20% reload speed. I'm not going to take anything away from that. That is pretty good. And then we've got the stabilizer. While burning, you can maintain ADS without disruption. Now, that's great. I would much rather that be all status effects. That would have been absolutely amazing. But this is built for the Battle for Brooklyn DLC. There's a lot of cleaner fire in it, which is a little bit unfortunate. But it's good. And if you want to blaze through the Brooklyn missions that have got the cleaners in, this is certainly going to help you, especially with the control points and things like that. Now, you are still going to take damage. You're just still going to be able to ADS. The benefit of the previous Hasbro Backfire builds that we had is that we actually maxed out in Hasbro. And therefore, because we maxed out in Hasbro, we could just burn. It didn't affect the ADS. And it kind of took, if we ran the Catalyst mask on any of them previous builds, it kind of takes that advantage away as well. So we don't need that. We can ADS. If we're maxed out on Hasbro, we can ADS. But the idea with this build is that we're not maxed out on Hasbro because we want to be able to take the bleed. Because as you can see here, we've not like the OD build that we looked at in a previous video. There's no other way of us proccing bleed on this apart from bleeding ourselves. We're not doing status effects to enemies. We're just doing damage. So first of all, that's one of the downfalls that I talked about with the Backfire build yesterday. I think that was on live stream rather than in the video. But I don't like the bleed effect. So that is going to be your first contention. If you mind taking the bleed effect on, then you'll be fine. You know, if you don't mind it, you'll be fine. If you do mind it, then this, like me, I guess this probably isn't for you. That, you know, I just kind of feel like I can do DPS with a Lexington and not have to worry about it, you know. So there is that to think about as well. But aside from that, you know, everything else is pretty hunky-dory. So what he mentioned was he built 50% critical hit. Sorry, 50% Hasbro. So you can see I'm exactly on the nose with that. And if we do turn the seasonal modifiers on, I think that goes to low 80s. So we're still not capped out and we will still get the bleed. There is one thing to suggest though that could also be a worry and this is why I initially never looked at the Backfire with this kind of build, with Strikers, Hunter's Fury, or anything really, was that when we were doing some testing a couple of weeks ago on one of my live streams, we noticed that the Backfire becomes inconsistent in bleeding. Now, it doesn't mention that anywhere. You know, here it just says on reload, apply a 10-second bleed to yourself, which deals 0.5% armor damage. But once you've built stacks up 2 or 3 times, that you gain some kind of semi-immunity that for some reason within that kind of session of battle, you stop getting bled, essentially. You become immune to bleed. So it's kind of like you build up resistance to it just for a very short time, and I don't really know what kind of activates it to go back on again. I know IKEA's talked about it, I know Dodd's talked about it, a lot of people said, oh, this has been noticed before, but there's no real telltale sign. And if you do know what the telltale sign is, let me know in the comments down below, because when we were testing it, we couldn't figure that out. So that's something else to take into contention. But one of the other things that I really didn't like about the Catalyst mask was the range. You've got to be within 25 meters. This is an SMG build. We're going to push within 25 meters, so fingers crossed that will be okay. But first of all, let's just take a look at the plain Jane stats that we're going to get. So this is all spec'd out now. We're at 58 crit chance, 108 crit damage. That is wonderful. We are going to do some gameplay with it as well, so don't worry. It's not all going to be boring stats and numbers. We're going to blast this. We are going to have to blast this for a second just to get Strikers up to the top. But as you can see, using the Banshee Pulse, great way to stack the stacks. It was like insta stacks. So now we're completely at the top. So let's see what the highest number is we get here. So the damage number is there. Right, so I'm going to flick off screen just a second, because I do want to make a note of that number. 1283,904. Great. All right, happy days. Now, there is a little problem with this build in the fact that it does actually work very well with coyotes. Because as you can see here, we are crit damage, Hasbro, crit chance, crit damage, obliterate. We can't actually take away any more crit chance, which is a little bit unfortunate, because SMGs come with it. We're at 58% crit chance already with the coyotes masking, so we are going to go over cap when it comes to playing within 25 meters, or 15 to 25 meters, as you can see here with the coyotes mask. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but that just kind of is what it is. So we'll push it back to 15 meters. And yet again, we will build our stacks. And we'll do some damage. Should really pay attention to the screen I'm playing on, not other things around me. So you can see we build up stats quite quickly. Backfire is one of the better SMGs for range. And now we're at the top. And now we'll hit the head. So there is our damage number. So that is 1276991. Alright, so old school here without pulling out a spreadsheet, which I know sometimes people hate, but 1283,904, and we're going to take away 1276991. So there's like nearly 7,000 damage in it in my build, which is actually nothing. Like if I did put it on a spreadsheet, it's not even going to give me a percent difference. So it's, it's not worth, taking the time to spreadsheet that up. So the builds are extremely even, right? And that is one thing that when I was talking to Patrick about, is that with the Coyotes mask, we're just adding more critical hit damage to the build. So as you can see here, we're at 132% critical hit damage. We're going to get another 10, 142. We could jig and poke at the build around a bit, maybe play with some of the resistances and things like that, maybe get it in the 150s. This might not be ideal, but I already know that I'm probably not going to play with this build regardless of the results going forward, because I don't like taking the bleed. So, but that's, I'm not diminishing the build in any way. So, that's because we get them diminishing returns, the more critical hit damage we add. Because don't forget, we're adding even more critical hit damage from here as well. So the lower the critical hit damage in the build, the more you're going to not suffer from them diminishing returns. And therefore that's why that works. Because when we look at taking out the Coyotes mask and putting in the Catalyst, we're adding 24% raw weapon damage. Whereas with the Coyotes mask, we're adding critical hit damage. But don't forget, we are also adding it for the rest of the team as well. So there is also a solo and group comparison here, but I'm not going to keep it on a group comparison. I am just going to think about it solo. So the question is, would I still run this build? There's nothing wrong with it. If you want to run it, you absolutely can. But my letdown with it is going to be, in which we'll go to a mission now and we'll try it in a minute, is that one, I feel like I will suffer from the 25-meter range if I was doing open world content, CPs and things like that, for instance, unless I was forced to play really, really up close and personal, which I feel like he must have been using the global modifiers for the armor regen for that to be a thing. So we'll put them on when we go and play a mission in a minute. But then I feel like if you're doing bigger missions, Manning, you know, legendary ones and things like that, Roosevelt, you're probably going to miss out a little bit as well. Lincoln Memorial will be an absolute no-brainer for this. It will work extremely well. Everything's very close within proximity. So let's go and do the beginning of Grand Washington Hotel. It's got some fairly close rooms and some fairly spread apart rooms, and we'll just kind of see what the vibe is and how much uptime there is. Because one of the advantages I said about the Coyotes mask is I point, I shoot, I get the buff. There's no downtime, there's no build-up time, there's nothing really to worry about with that. So that was one of the kind of advantages that I said, and really one of the reasons why I said I think this mask needs a buff. Like, I think a lot of people, they like it and that's great, but I think we should push for this to be a little bit more unique. If it doesn't need to be the DPS leader, but it should be unique in a way. Okay, so I've got modifiers on.
You're right next to the
I've just recovered from a sneezing fit, if you was wondering why the video went a bit weird towards the end.
Head to the service entrance on the east side of the building. Once you're inside,
So really good right off the rip. There was a moment where we had half stacks, but then by the time we got to the end, we had full stacks. Hyenas are actually a great example for this as well, because there's a lot of status effects we can apply to them just by doing things like this. So just that we've just hit full damage. So third enemy in, we hit full damage.
hostile radio intercepted.
And it's tanky as well.
Everybody, get to the atrium.
shit. Saint's here.
The who now?
Hyena big shot.
The who know?
We need to
I'm going to hang back just a tiny bit because I do want my Banshee pulse to come back. The benefit there was I cracked the Banshee. You've got to play a little bit smarter, right? Cracking the enemy's weak points is a clear win with this this mask on. We have lost some damage. We're not at full stacks. We've lost some more there now, but we should get it back with that bleed. Yes, we did. I am playing the reload gate. See, I reloaded then and got no bleed, which is unfortunate. Like I talked about before, that mini resistance. But we have got Banshee pulse up. He's just chilling,
You went all the way to the top
and we can do that.
Take the stairs to the
So,
right of the elevators and work your way.
and that kind of goes over the point that I was saying before. This mask is fine if you want to run it for the advantages that it does have. The ADS in Brooklyn, if the reload speed, you do get an amount of bonus armor when you get to the cap as well. you know, and things like that. That's great. It's extremely close in damage if you're making yourself tankier. As we can see, it's very, 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 very close in damage. And if you're playing run and gun builds, that bonus armor and reload speed are going to come in. It's not all bad. But, and I say this with a heavy heart because I got so much stick in the last video in the comment section over this. I'm not saying that about Patrick. He was very good to talk to. We had a very good conversation back and forth about stats and play styles and stuff like that. You've got to accept that you're going to take that bleed damage and you're going to get that wonky effect on your screen. And there is an element of downtime, which for me is going to bring it under the damage for the Coyotes mask. You've seen my build videos for a long, long time. I always favor DPS damage builds. I do venture into other types of builds every now and again because I'd like to make sure that I've got an audience and I'm pleasing all of them. But unfortunately, it does, it will drop down in damage because of the not 100% uptime. The Banshee Pulse really does help. The Bleed really does help. It does stay up a lot of the time. Hunter's Fury, we both agreed, that was a no-go because you have to take off a talent, which is a lot of extra damage. So that does suck a little bit, unfortunately. It feels like it might be better suited with that. But again, you're losing a lot of damage. But that is also fine, if you want them benefits. And I want to make this very clear in this video because I don't think I made it clear enough in the last video. If you want the bonus armor, if you want the reload speed, if you want to be able to ADS in fire, this is the mask for you. It absolutely is. It's worth putting into your build for that point. But if you don't want to lose damage and you want to continue doing the most damage and have the ability to buff your teammates, then the Coyotes mask is still the mask for you. And what's shiny and new sometimes just isn't the best, unfortunately. So that's going to be it for the video. Big shout out again to Patrick for dropping into my comments. It was always great to have a conversation with him. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe, and maybe join if you enjoy this kind of content. Make me feel a little bit better. Come on guys, these comments have been rough these last few days. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching everybody. Goodbye.